5 a.m. The latest information from the National Hurricane Center. We're going to go over some information and look at some model data. So as of right now, Tropical Storm Ian is movement is west at 13. So sometime tomorrow, well, within the 8 hours, we're going to start to see a slight curve. And it is expected to become major hurricane status by Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, maybe slightly before. Once it gets into the waters to the north of Cuba, western Cuba, the island of western Cuba, once it gets to the north of that, the water temperatures are close to about 85 to 87 degrees. Very warm, very favorable environment. The shear is going to be low as well. It's going to be anticyclonic winds. They're going to help really start to blossom and really start to undergo what's called rapid strengthening. Sometime during the day on Tuesday, we should hit major hurricane status. Now, one of the things that I want everyone to pay attention to is the cone of uncertainty, all right? So forecast modeling is pretty good right now with the track. Where it's going to make landfall, though, is the key, because when you have a major hurricane, there tends to be what's called track wobble or eye wobble, and that's because it's undergoing massive strengthening, and it tends to do that. It tends to wobble as it's doing that. So probably about between 5 and 8 o'clock, maybe a little sooner on Tuesday, we should hit major hurricane status. And then from there on out, if it's looking like a Category 3 to a Category 4 right now, that's what it's looking like. Right now, a Category 3 does look pretty promising based off the newest data. Things are still going to change from now. I do expect there is the possibility of this becoming a little bit more strong right before landfall. I do think now, if it hits major hurricane status at this point at 8 o'clock Tuesday, let's just put this out there. So if it hits major hurricane status 8 o'clock Tuesday, that's 120 miles from the coastline, from 120 to 140 miles from the coastline of Florida, western Florida. And that's a lot of time. That's a couple of hours if it's moving between 10 and 13 miles per hour. If it's in between that mile per hour range, you're looking at between 3 to 7 hours. Well, you're looking at 5 to 8 hours, maybe a little bit more, before you get to the core of the northeast quadrant, which is the strongest part. So let's play around with this scenario. So that's kind of what I'm banking on right now. I think that's a good scenario. I think it's a accurate scenario, to say the least. I think if it has 100 to 130 miles of open water to work with, but before it hits major hurricane status, I think it does have a potential to get to a Category 4. Now, that is a scenario. That's a scenario based off me looking at data all day long, looking at forecast models, looking at forecasting averages, looking at surface information, looking at atmospheric information, looking at information from the National Hurricane Center, comparing past runs and future runs, looking through a plethora of different data. But I do think that it has the potential to get in that range of strength. So we're going to go ahead and look at some of the different forecasting models here. So this is the GFS ensemble, and this is just one ensemble. There's many different ensembles, and this one is pretty consistent. It's been consistent, and until we get it to take that curve, the model should really start, the ensemble model should really start to come together, and you should see these ensemble models start to squeeze together a lot tighter with confidence. And that's what we've been seeing over the last day. So, and most of these are hinting at between a 950 and a 935 central pressure. So that's very strong. It's a very destructive hurricane. Also, another thing to mention, I do think it will slow down. I do believe that this hurricane is going to slow down as it approaches land, and that is because we have a trough to the north, and there's a slight, light amount of shear. I do think it's going to slow down. That's another problem that we could also be looking at as well, because if it does that, then that means it's going to be over that area for a more of a prolonged period of time, battering the area, winds battering the area, weakening structures more, having time to really unleash the potential force that it could potentially have on that area. So I think that it does have some substantial potential to cause some very substantial damage if this plays out. And there are some ensemble models. There's not enough ensembles right now for me to agree with it. There's some of them approaching the 940 and the 930 barometric range. There's not enough of them right now for me to even agree with that. I do think it's definitely a possibility, and it definitely needs to be watched for sure. I've been hearing from a few media outlets that people in Florida are like, yeah, we're used to this. Yes, you are used to it, but keep in mind, if this becomes major hurricane status, once it's in the area and you see guys like me down there, it's too late to go. Okay? Please keep that in mind. When you see people like me driving with a modified vehicle that can take this into that area, it's too late for you to leave. Alright? So then you'll have to deal with those consequences in your actions. Not to sound harsh, but it's the reality of the situation. These things are going to change. Don't get me wrong, they're going to change. But it's model agreements and confidence are coming together. We're going to look at what's called an intensity guidance. And intensity guidance, what you like to look for is you like to see the ensembles kind of average together and come together in agreement. And that's what we're seeing. Pretty consistent. I think that we're going to see these adjust, and I think that we'll start to see an uptick in these intensity guidances. Nonetheless, the last, I'd say, 12 hours, we've had on some different ensembles, on some of these model intensity guides, we've had some more of the models kind of approaching a medium Cat 4. I'm not sold on that right now. I'm definitely sold on a Category 3, a high-end, medium to high-end Category 3, maybe even approaching that 4 mark. But right now I'm not sold on being a medium to high-end 4. At least right now I'm not. Things are going to change, and this is to basically give you as much information as possible and go over a couple different scenarios. And last night we were talking about, I think, 5 different scenarios, and that's just now I've narrowed that down to 3 potential scenarios, and that's a good indication of confidence. So once again, the 12Z run, ensembles, model intensity, guidance, forecast. You see a congregation of ensembles coming together. You know, it's slight uptick in the ensemble saying, hey, you know, this new data coming in, it looks good. You know, we're going up a little bit. So one of the other things we're going to look at is the we're going to look at the infrared real quick. And there has been a lot of new activity. We're having a broadened wind field. We're starting to see a more of a broadened, nice sculpted organized structure now with this very symmetrical, and we're seeing a lot of organized convection in the center of the low pressure, and it looks really good. As you can see right here, if you look, you see the convective cloud tops. This is basically good convection. When you see the brighter colors, it means it's really blowing up. But if you take and look, if you follow my cursor, you see these are mid-level winds. Down below, you can look at a satellite image and you can depict the wind fields and then the levels in the atmosphere. So this is more of the higher elevated clouds right here, and then you have this is kind of more towards the surface, about 8,000, 5,000 feet up. You see that flow right here. That is gotten a lot more organized over the last 12 hours. And I've been noticing that, and we have some very good explosive convective development within the core of the area of circulation, and that's really good. Now, another thing to also notice is just recently we had a flare of very good explosive convective development to the southeast of the area of circulation, and it is ingesting that convective activity into the circulation. And what's going to happen is that's going to feed in to it, and that's why I think based off the National Hurricane Center assessment with the data that they have, I think this may get close to hurricane status, maybe a little bit before hold on a second. A little bit before Monday. I think if it continues in that stage, and I think we may be looking at hurricane status probably maybe about 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock Sunday night. I do think it has the potential to get into that development before then. And we actually hit tropical storm status about, I think it was 6 hours ahead of schedule today. And I was watching it through the day, and I seen, hey, we just went from tropical depression to tropical storm. 5 minutes, got the data in, looked at it. 3 hours later, the National Hurricane Center updated to reflect that data, and that's what we're looking at right now. It is a tropical storm right now, but I do think it has the potential to become hurricane status sometime the evening hours on Sunday. And I do think I do think it does. One of the other things we're going to look at is the water vapor imagery, and I'm going to zoom out so I can show everyone this. So I had someone point this out to me, and we do have a little bit of drier air. There's a few areas of drier air. It's what's going to happen is you have a development. You have some convective development that is on the northeast side of that band of drier air, and what's happening is it's getting pulled in to tropical storm, and what's going on is it's actually eroding those layers of drier air. And so that's not going to affect this. It's not going to affect the development of this. Also to note, we have a area of low pressure, and it is pulling in moisture, and it's starting to erode and cut off the flow to the north, and northeast Texas, southern Oklahoma. It's starting to cut that flow off of drier air, and I do believe that this drier air will become more saturated with moist air at the surface and about 5,000 feet up. So from right now, that's the way it's looking. So I don't see that being a big impact. I can already see the flow being cut off. So it's things are coming together. This one really has to be monitored. It really has to be watched because it has potential, and it has potential. So y'all have a great night. If you're in Florida and you're watching, I appreciate it very much. I will be leaving Monday night, probably about 8 o'clock. Maybe even 6, 5 o'clock I'll be leaving. It is a 20-hour drive for me. It is 20 hours. I'm driving that straight through. I'm not stopping. The only time I'll stop is for gas. So I will be leaving Monday, getting into place, getting into position. If things are changed, things change from now to there, stay tuned.